Hello, you guys. This is Josh Vision, and I'm here to give you my season 1, episode 1 review of Turn Washington Spies. So, we're introduced in this episode to Abraham Woodhull. So, Abraham Woodhull is basically a farmer, and he is the son of the local magistrate, Richard Woodhull. Also, we're introduced to his wife and I believe his 1-year-old son. So right off the bat from this episode, we notice that his crops are kind of failing, especially his cabbages, his maggots and all that stuff. And he's really distraught about this, obviously, since winter is coming, and also apparently because he has to pay back a debt to a certain someone. Nothing that's mentioned before he goes off to try to speak to the guy he owes money to is the fact that he's trying to get his son to walk, but his wife sort of tells him that maybe that isn't such a good idea, considering once the boy learns how to walk, it won't be so long until he learns how to walk, like a soldier. And ironically, once she says that, we see a British soldier who's been living with them in their quarters, I believe, for the past couple of months due to the war between, the rebels and the crown. And he basically apologizes for interrupting the conversation, and it seemed like he's late, so he's basically running to his little, I think, platoon, whatever. So basically, back to what I was saying in regards to the guy that he owes money to. So the guy that he owes money to actually is the owner of this bar, this establishment. You could tell there's tension between them right from the get-go, but more so with the bar owner than Abraham, because Abraham seems to be like a cool dude. But at first, I thought it was just basically the money, but actually, it seems as though it has something to do with the owner's wife, because clearly, right when you watch it, it seems as though like Abraham and his wife have some type of history. It might have been sexual. It might have been like it could have gone to that level, but due to the marriages, it caused a little bit of awkwardness, which is seen to me like during this whole conversation when the owner's wife is saying it's been a while since she's seen Abraham, and then she pauses and then she mentions Abraham and his wife, that they should come to dinner soon. And Abraham's kind of against it, and the owner's kind of stewing, annoyed and angry. So while this is going on, we see some of the British soldiers drunk, being rambunctious and all that. I believe actually one of the soldiers, who's a captain, Captain Joyce, really starts to cause a lot of drama, basically, and really being obnoxious. So the owner of the bar tries to calm him down, but he's not having it, so he pushes the owner. Him and the owner gets a little bit of a fist fight, and I believe Abraham tries to help, but basically the owner takes them both off. Off. He takes them both on and beats them basically with the help of some of his own men. So Abraham and the owner is like put away basically for the rest of the night, and due to Abraham's father, his father's influence and him being the local magistrate, Abraham is set free while the owner is basically stuck, where they was at. So another thing that should be mentioned in this episode is the fact that we are introduced to the character of Robert Rogers, I believe, and I believe he's a part of the Queen's Ranger Army. So we're introduced to him and his little Ranger Army, which isn't huge, it's kind of like medium size, but they're able to take out at least, I believe, like 40 or 50, probably 100, around that number of the rebels' men. And it turns out they ambushed them because one of the soldiers actually survives. He's like the lone survivor of that ambush when he plays dead, essentially, while one of Robert Rogers' men is basically trying to make sure that every one of the soldiers is dead. He's like got this long gun with like a sharp blade at the end, stabbing him, making sure. And he misses, the guy that survives, and the guy stabs him right through, basically right here, and he puts on his clothes and he tries to walk away, but Robert Rogers notices it along with his group, and the guy gets shot with one of Rogers' guns, but he's able to escape. So the next scene, the guy's name is revealed as Benjamin, and he talks about how there's no way that ambush would have happened unless there was some spy within their own ranks. He tells that to his higher ups, to his higher up guy, and he tries to tell the guy that he needs a spy of his own, that like from New York basically, and that we have a guy that answers to him from New York, like a courier or something, that they could basically do the same thing that the Queen's Ranger Army, led by Robert Rogers, did, basically, but to better effect. But the higher up doesn't think that's the case because Washington basically destroyed New York, and he doesn't think it's a good time to do it, essentially. So this leads to Abraham. So Abraham is released, from, basically a prison, I guess, released to jail. And he speaks to his father. His father wasn't really feeling the fact that Abraham helped out that guy, basically the bar owner, saying to Abraham that if he needed help paying the debt, Abraham could just come to him. Abraham said, nah, he's good. So it seems as though, like, their relationship is not, like, tense. Well, it does seem like it's tense, but it does seem like there's a little bit of conflict between them. It seems like Abraham wants to be his own man, and he feels a little bit like a kid in a way if he goes to his father for help, because his father's like this powerful, really influential guy, in this town, from what I've, basically interpreted from the scene. So we see later in the night, basically, that Abraham visits the bar owner and tells him that the best solution would be basically to just go to prison, take the prison option, because he knows people. And I think one thing I failed to mention, you guys, the fact that this dude is a part, or he knows people in the rebel cause, and that's something that Abraham mentions, essentially, and that he knows people over at the prison where they're going to send him to, and that he shouldn't really be too concerned or worried. So the guy tells Abraham, I got a condition, watch my wife, because I think that I believe he knows the fact that the soldier, Simcoe, the Lieutenant Simcoe, who was under, Captain Joyce, the guy who started the whole bar fight, basically, he had eyes for his wife. And I believe Simcoe was actually living, at their house quarters, basically, under the Major Hewitt, or something along the lines. So he wants Abraham to watch over her, essentially. That was, what he wants Abraham to do. So we see Abraham the next day basically go try to smuggle, basically illegal, I believe it's like illegal smuggling, something like that, his cabbages. And it turns out that he met someone he didn't expect to meet, and that was his friend Caleb. So apparently Caleb is not allowed back into their town. I don't know what the freak he did, but he traveled to Greenland, and he became somewhat of a successful person, a real world weary person, essentially. And they're barring with each other about the deal, and Abraham's trying to take advantage of the fact that he's his friend. A lot of back and forth, basically. Another thing that happened is that, like I mentioned with Simcoe comes to meet up with, Simcoe actually, like, notices that Anna is who's actually the bar owner's wife. I think I didn't mention that, actually. Is cleaning the soldiers who lives in her quarters, clothes, or their army uniforms. And he mentions the fact that the captain, Captain Joyce, was found murdered in the field with his throat cut. So he was wondering who was responsible for it, but I believe he felt that either she was responsible for it or Abraham was responsible for it. And I think he leans more towards Abraham, since I believe he asked her where Abraham has been. And I think even if that was the case, if it was Abraham, he seems really infatuated, or he really likes Anna. And we see a scene in which he holds on to Anna very kind of tight, kind of very domineering, kind of sexual. And she said, if you were a gentleman, you would let me go. And he let her go, and says basically that he wants his clothes done by the week's end, and that he lives in this house now, since her husband is, especially now considering that her husband is going to be sent off to prison, So that was basically, a very interesting scene. Besides that, we see Abraham try to do the smuggling gig again, but he's captured by Continental Army soldiers, aka rebels, and he's introduced to his old friend Benjamin, who I mentioned earlier in this review, was a lone survivor of that ambush by the Queen's Army Rangers. So he basically tells Abraham that he needs a spy, essentially, and like basically that he's the best guy for the job, and he wanted to know basically who did Abraham make the deal with. Abraham did snitch. He didn't tell him who he made the deal with, and I believe Benjamin sort of guilt trips him with a whole like, listen, we like our cause, we fight for our people, we fight for freedom and like the revolution and all that stuff, and it sort of inspires or at least gets to Abraham. So Abraham, I believe he tries to like him. He tries to explain to Benjamin like how's he going to explain to his father, Major Hewitt, and the rest of the British people, the British Army that's there in Sawtucket, I believe, which is their name of their town, why he was gone for so long. So I believe Benjamin just tells him just tell the truth, tell them what you were doing. So that's basically what he did. He even added a little bit of he even cut himself in his head, like on the side of his head, to have more for dramatic effect, basically, to Major Hewitt. Major Hewitt buys what he says, basically, and that's mainly due to Major Hewitt and his father being the best of friends. But Simcoe isn't buying it. He feels as though that that Abraham has something to do with Captain Joyce's death, and he threatens Abraham, basically saying that I've killed people a lot like you, lots of them. So after this, we see Abraham have a secret meeting with Anna, telling Anna about Caleb and Benjamin, who are all friends of Abraham and hers, and that Benjamin wants him to become a spy, essentially. But he's thinking about actually not going through with it. And she says, listen, look at what the British have already taken from us. They already have taken over our homes. They're everywhere. Like, we need them gone. And how much you let them take from you? And have some backbone. So she leaves. So after this, I believe Abraham has dinner with Major Hewitt and his father. Keep in mind, Major Hewitt is actually is a major of the British Army, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that. So they're having dinner and they're talking about the whole conflict between the Royal Army and the rebels, and he says that he believes that Abraham has been afflicted by what some of the people of the colonies have been afflicted with, and I believe he says something along the lines of anarchy, and I believe Abraham said, you mean self-rule? He was like, no, chaos. Like, and basically the conversation was about how one side believes that the crown is there for order and all that, to keep the law and the customs. And I believe Abraham was like, listen, we have been self-ruling ourselves for so long. Can you really blame us for having the views that we have when it comes to you guys like overstepping your bounds, even though you are soldiers of the crown, essentially. So at some point, Abraham finds the plans, and it just came to me just now, you guys, but I think these plans kind of go back to earlier in the episode, I believe, in which this soldier, I believe a soldier named John, like a soldier or a major named John, British, actually, and he speaks with Rogers about some type of, he speaks to Rogers about some type of safe house that the rebels are actually in. So I believe it's in New York, some of them either New York or Connecticut, in that the Continental Army, or at least part of their troops, are going to be there. So they're going to try to plan another ambush, and he wants Rogers to be there. But ironically, he isn't there, and Benjamin and Caleb, actually take part in that little setup. They made them think they were going to be there, but they weren't exactly where. They was around the area, but they weren't like where the British actually thought they were going to be at, and they massacred the unit that was sent there. Before I get to more detail about that massacre, basically it's revealed that Caleb and Benjamin was working together from the beginning, and that they were testing Abraham. That Benjamin was testing Abraham to see if he was trustworthy by, Abraham passed by Abraham not snitching, basically, that Caleb was the one that he bartered with. So just part of a plan from both sides. So either way, Simcoe, the soldier I mentioned earlier, he's captured by both Benjamin and Caleb. So while this is going on, it's kind of like a la Godfather in a way, because I believe Abraham had to put his hand on the Bible with his father there, and he's basically admitting, well, saying that he will stay loyal to the crown and all this stuff he intends to do, like by the law and all this crap. And I thought it was very Godfatherish, because I believe Michael kind of did the same thing when it came to his sins, while all his enemies were getting murdered and shot for their part in his brother Sonny's death. So I thought that was really cool, actually. So I believe that's about it. And by the way, let me mention this before I forget. The reason why the ambush by the Continental Army was very successful was because I believe Abraham later in the episode spoke with Anna, apologized to her, and told her to use her laundry as kind of like being a signal for when the Continental to attack, basically. So that's what I remember. Just came to me just now. So much crap in this episode. So thank you guys for watching. If I missed anything, please write some comments down below. I'm sorry the little pauses I did during this video. There was so much information hurled at me in this first episode that I wasn't expecting, but sorry if y'all were kind of put off by that. But once again, thank you guys for watching. Adios, Josh Vision.